Welcome to the Specialty Cropcast on Poems and Stones. Join us for real conversations with farmers, agribusiness owners, and industry experts as we dive into farming, products, and the business of agriculture, all from the people who know it best.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Episode 7 of the Specialty Cropcast on Poems and Stones. How is everybody doing today?
Good.
All right,
Zach?
Steve?
Tired? He was up spraying all night?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Getting that cover on.
Want to put a cover on the tarts.
Oh, they're going to be worth something this year,
That's what I heard.
If you have some.
if you haven't, if you didn't pull them all out yet.
after tonight.
Yeah, another frost tonight.
Yeah, another frost tonight. But, all right, guys, this episode is brought to you by Wilbur Ellis, supporting growers across the country with expert agronomy, crop protection, nutrition, and data-driven solutions for more than 100 years. So this week, like we teased at the end of the last week's episode with Alec Eltonen from Eltonen Orchards, we said we were going to bring in our favorite beekeeper, Travis Schock. How are we doing?
Good. Your only beekeeper, too, though.
That's
thankfully.
right, yeah. That's our only one.
Yeah.
the head beekeeper.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for having me. Good to be here. I've been keeping bees. I'll just start with the intro because it seems like we might as well just get it out of the way. Keeping bees for a little over half my life. I'm 34, creeping up on 35. Absolutely love keeping bees. Been doing it in a commercial standpoint basically that entire time from grade school off and on through high school, and went to college, got a real job. Didn't like that, went back to beekeeping, turned it into a real job, and chased my wife to the west side of the state and ran into these guys who were farming cherries and were looking for somebody to run some bees for them. So
Yes, we were in some trouble when you started.
it was a little bit of a mess. Yeah, it was a little bit of a...
It was
Tell
in,
us about
it
that.
was in a
What do you
rough
mean?
it was in a rough shape. We had a pretty sizable operation before, and what was it? More just like a lack of care or motivation kind of built up over multiple years, and we kind of lost
Or education, maybe.
like 90% of our of what we had. So when Travis took over, it was pretty much back down to a skeleton crew. We were renting bumblebees
Gotcha.
and doing them when Trav showed up, I think. So
Props to those bumblebees, though. They fly, pretty cold temps. We could have used them maybe with this frost advisory and what's left of the flowers. But
Did you guys have a beekeeper before Travis, or?
yeah, we had
Okay.
an older gentleman who was also wanting to be done, and maybe that was also part of it.
I think that played a role. I think he maybe kind of got tossed into that role too when the guy before him had passed. That
Right.
kind of tragically, but anyway, I think he also kind of failed to identify a type of foul brood disease that I was kind of finding when I was going through a lot of the equipment. And it's kind of it's like a fungal, or it's a viral thing that comes through on the wax, and you can identify it when there's bees present and there's brood because the larva is snotty and brown instead of like a white grub would be. And
Right.
if Zach wanted to pull up American foul brood and show you guys what it would look like compared to like a healthy frame of brood. And when I say brood, this is, the reproductive phase of the bee. This is where they're going from an egg to a larva and pupating into a bee. And this is all within about a 28-day period, 30-day period from the time that the egg is laid to they hatch. But I think that played a role. So a lot of the stuff that I had come across, when we come across that, we just burn it because it's there forever. And it can be treated with antibiotics. We're already getting deep into the weeds on something here. It's kind of funny. But
It happens like that.
Yeah,
It just sneaks up on you.
Yeah,
Like,
just keep rolling.
It's and I'm sure you guys see this, and I think it's used in almost all types of ag, where it's like Tylan and terramycin. I think you mix it together. It's like oxytetracycline or something like that. It's
Oxytec.
yeah. So we use that in the bees, and that kind of knocks that back. But traditionally, if I see it, I wait till nighttime comes, and I will take a gallon of pure alcohol I know all the bees are back in there because that's what they do. They all fly home at night, and I'll just make sure I get them all. And I alcohol the entire field force, all the bees, the entire box. And then I go and I burn that entire colony with all those bees in it because we don't want American foul brood, transferring. And it's not worth trying to fix that one colony to risk it collapsing. And then, bees are so social when you have, even if you just have a few colonies near each other, when one gets weak, the others kind of notice that and they'll start to pick on each other when there's a lack of resources. There's a dearth. There's always a dearth in between blooms from time to time. It's not perfect where, as soon as the cherries are done, the autumn olive comes out. And when that's done, the black locust trees open up. It doesn't work out that way. There's always maybe a week or two where they get hungry. And you don't want them fighting, but it happens. And the weak ones lose. And sometimes they're weak because they have a disease. And now all of a sudden these other bees rush in, steal all the resources, and also, gain some bacteria that isn't good. And they're very social. They can transfer it,
So is like a bee box, like we've all seen bee boxes. Like, is one box like considered? What would you consider that? Is that like a colony?
So a colony, yeah. So
each colony has its own box.
Yeah. So a lot of people would consider like the components of what I would call a colony is a box with a queen and bees and all the phases of reproduction happening. And what we would do is once that box is pretty much filled with bees and like they're growing, we get them another box on top, and then you start stacking them up.
Gotcha.
When they get bigger and bigger. But traditionally we run what we call brood nests, which are 9 5/8 inch deep. We call it brood nest deep, and it'll come with 9 or 10 frames. I should have brought a box. You've shown you've shown bees on this podcast, I believe, a few times.
Yeah, on the channel.
Yeah, the people watching
They've seen you before.
They're probably familiar with what's going on here. They've seen me be stung once or twice. They've seen you been stung just recently.
I should put a picture up. I have yet to put the one up.
But Steve hasn't. Steve hasn't seen it.
You haven't seen the one?
No, I haven't.
I sent you.
Oh, man.
I don't watch yours.
Oh, that's right. You haven't watched the channel.
That's rough.
Yeah, he doesn't.
That's
I just got a
awesome.
like on Facebook from him for the first time.
Yeah.
We're like
That's
we're
good.
6 episodes
He
deep.
doesn't-
I'm not a Facebook guy.
You're fighting the algorithm. I feel you. He doesn't want to like or follow anything. So they start throwing
I like to
stuff
go
at
against
you.
the grain,
Right.
Good.
So, Travis, I mentioned this a couple podcasts ago too. And it's like, what makes somebody want to be a beekeeper? Like, what makes, like, most people stay 10 miles away and they don't want to get stung, but you go out there without a veil and a t-shirt and you pick up boxes. And I was telling about how they shake the
Swarm. Yeah.
the swarms into a box. I've seen you just walk under and you hold the box right here and you shake it and they boom, and they just fly everywhere. And it's crazy. What's the drive? What makes you, or where did it start?
I
Where did
guess-
it start?
What made you wake up one morning and say, I want to
And I'm just gonna
go
get
out and be
stung
with
every
bees
day.
every day?
I had a childhood friend whose dad was like a second generation beekeeper, and I had a lot of fun with him, and we were like in a rock band together, and the where we played was at their shop, and there was all sorts of bee equipment in their shop. It was a barn, it was basically just a glorified barn. But he paid in cash and beer, this guy, Joe. And
Joe.
it was awesome, and I kind of got tossed into it at a relatively young age, and I enjoyed it. But I was also just really good family friends with them, and I was over at their place all the time. So I just kind of, like I said, I snuck away from it a little bit, but it was kind of like a summer job, and I just always enjoyed it. I honestly didn't ever have any real issues when I get stung. I never blew up like you have. Like, I've been stung in the eye so many times. I've never puffed up like that. It was wild.
I had never actually been stung in the face. It's
Yeah.
always been in the hand or where they crawl up you at night, and then like 2 hours later you get stung in the ribs because they don't fly at night; they crawl first.
I've always liked honey. So I mean,
Nice. Yep.
I've always wanted to have access to honey. I don't know. It's just I'm a sugar guy. It's probably way too much, but I think that it doesn't affect honey doesn't actually affect your glucose index as much as
Right.
like regular sugar does. So it's another good thing why you should eat your honey. Or just replace it as a natural sweetener if you're you're a big time baker, I don't know, Steve, you like to bake?
I don't.
I don't either, really.
I know almost everyone's wife who's listening has gone through the sourdough phase. And my wife, when she went through it,
My
she
wife
would
has
load
not
up.
gone through the sourdough
She
phase.
loaded up with honey. We were buying honey from the
like
office
that.
like crazy.
I like
and I
that.
was like, I can't afford
You don't
this.
need
I
to be
can't even
doing
afford
that.
our own honey.
Yeah,
It's so
you don't
expensive.
need to be doing
You're
that.
putting the prices are too high.
Yeah, well, I thought that I had an employee pricing list.
I'm sure somebody was giving me the.
Oh yeah, I think we know. It's all good. We'll make sure that you guys got honey for your sourdough though, for sure.
That's right. Yeah. So it's
So
great.
what does the actual beekeeper do?
Well, it depends on. I mean, the term beekeeper is kind of a funny thing because in nature, a colony is essentially a superorganism, right? So this one queen, and all these bees are essentially like one thing. In the way that nature basically reproduces bees, besides just making a lot of bees, is that when a colony gets too big for the nature, it would be a hole in a tree, right? Mm-hmm. So when there's too many bees and they're full of honey, the queen, she'll stop laying eggs, she'll shrink up so she can fly, because she's got this big butt from laying eggs and she has all this reproductive organism stuff going on. But she stops laying and she kind of shrinks up, and that way she can fly. And she releases this pheromone. The whole colony starts to raise what we call virgin queen cells. We'll get into that. But so basically this colony's full. She'll leave with like 60% of the flight force. A lot of young bees, but they'll all fill both of their stomachs. So each bee has two stomachs, a regular digestive one and what they call a honey gut. But they'll fill them up and they'll go with her. And the field bees will predetermine where they're going to land. And then from there, if they don't know of a good spot, they will find a new home. A lot of times they have already figured out where they're going to go. And part of the reason I shake them off the tree without anything on them is because like you and I, after a turkey dinner, when you got both of your stomachs full, you're just like, yeah. So they're pretty vulnerable in that at that point, but they also they're not really protecting a home. In their head, they're kind of just out there on a tree, and they don't want to sting you because they know that they need to stay alive. I'm pretty sure that they're aware of their immortality if they sting you to an extent.
Gotcha.
So that's why you can get away with that. And I do get stung a few
times. Not the one who stung me. Right for the eye.
She had it in for you, man.
Popped me.
I try and tell people though, is like if a field bee wants to sting you, she's gonna get you. It's just a matter of where, is like. So swatting at a bee is like the worst thing you can do. The best thing you do is like maybe cover your eyes if you can, like with your hands or your ears, if or pull your shirt up over your ears, cover your eyes if you don't have any PPE for beekeeping. But that's something Tom will tell you, Talon, is remember you got to bring your PPE.
Yeah, he says every time I do this, right? This, he goes, "You're an idiot. Don't move."
Dude, he's right.
He goes, "Don't move. Don't breathe heavy."
Yeah, and out your nose if you can.
Because don't they see the CO2 leaving?
They smell at the pheromone level. So kind of like a bear almost, right? You can smell fear. It's like you release a pheromone when you freak out, and they smell it. And if you stay still enough, bees move at such a fast pace that they will mistake you for an inanimate object, actually. So if you could sit still,
that's tough.
But if they've already tagged you, and it might be over for you if they've already stung you once. Because
I've seen them hit Tom. Where he was unloading a truck and he was just getting popped in the head, and he was like screaming at Ricky, and Ricky's run over there and just smoking the hell out of Tom.
Shoot.
Right out of Tom's head.
Yeah, so at the same rate that they smell the alarm fear, they smell your fear, they can also tag you, where they'll release a pheromone like that you're the attacker. And sometimes when you're working a pallet that has 4 colonies, with the guy next across from you might be getting stung, and you can just be standing there not getting stung at all, and they're just going after him because they think he's the guy. It's just
very funny when it's not you. I bet.
Yeah, it is. It is very funny. But a smoker, which blocks that alarm pheromone,
Gotcha.
that goes a long way. And not being rammy and, not killing bees while you're trying to manipulate a colony is good to do that too. But yeah, the whole swarm thing is kind of wild because, she leaves and then the original colony is set with the task of raising a virgin queen, which, what they'll do is they'll have eggs that the previous queen, fertilized eggs.
Yep.
Fertilized egg is a worker bee. An unfertilized egg is a male, what we call a drone bee, which we'll get into the life cycle of that in a minute. But the life cycle of a queen, she's selected and raised. She's fed a larger amount of royal jelly, and then where she's morphing from a larva to a bee, she has a lot more space to develop, reproductive organs in her body. She can grow a longer abdomen and all that fun stuff. And they try and raise like 10 of these queen cells just in case something happens to one of them or it's unviable or whatever happens. And the first one who hatches usually runs around and immediately goes and tries to chew out and sting the other ones. It's immediately a royal rumble. Sometimes they, multiples hatch and they have to fight to the death. Mm-hmm. Once one is established, there's only one in there. She gets to fly out to mate, and it's usually after she's about 4 days old. She's kind of limbered up. She's got the motor skills, and she has to fly out, mate with at least 10 male bees, drone bees. We hope 10 to 15, and this is on one flight. She flies out, has a mate just this one day, and comes back to the same box where she's mated now for life. We're on a honey flow in July, which is like peak summer, longer days. And they lay by the moon phase. She'll lay up to 2,000 eggs a day for the rest of her life. In some, 5 to 8 years of a lifespan. But in a commercial standpoint, the way we kind of run them and push them through different blooms, they usually go like 2 to 3 years, and we replace them just because a younger queen is more viable. For production wise, it's you notice better results with a younger queen.
So when you buy queens, what's the point of buying the queen if they will make it themselves? Is that when you start to create hives from scratch then?
Yeah, so
explain why
we're talking. I'm talking about the natural way a colony does it, but I don't allow for that to happen because what you're looking at is okay, so they raise a queen. There's a huge gap. So I skip all that gap of nature where she has 4 days after she's born, this virgin, right? Well, first, she had to hatch. So there might have been, the colony swarmed, and it might have been 2 or 3 days before that.
A lot of time passes. So that she hasn't hatched, she hasn't mated. It takes her a few days after she's mated to even start to lay. Well, that's like a whole week where there's no reproductive phase. So there's a huge gap. And just think if I guess for us, it's just like imagine if like there was a whole 10-year period where the United States stopped reproducing. It's like there's going to be a huge gap there. It's not like we couldn't overcome it, but it wouldn't be ideal. So what I'm doing is I'm instead of waiting until they don't have any more space, I'm making sure that they either always have space or that when I split them, I'm within days giving them a new queen on the sides that need it. Making sure that they have somebody there, so a mama home, and that eliminates a lot of what ifs because anything could happen to that queen if you let them naturally do it. She could fly out and mate and get eaten by a dragonfly or hit by a car on 31. It's a thing. It's a total crapshoot, or she just might not have found her way back. It's crazy. It's just nature.
So what's the lifespan of like the different bees?
So like a queen bee is, sometimes I've seen some people claim like 10 years.
Yep.
A field bee used to be like 40 days, except when you're talking about fat bees, which are overwintered bees. They go dormant. They live for months. But a regular field bee is like 30 to 40 days.
Okay.
And, they're born, when a worker bee is born, she immediately has to clean the cell she was born out of. And then she has to go find her own food.
and then she serves what we call nurse bee, where she feeds eggs and larvae. And then, after about a week, she becomes what we call oh man, I'm drawing a blank. She's basically a worker bee, but it's a worker bee, but she's a builder. She's a prime age to ingest honey and excrete wax. So bees make wax through something called wax glands that they have on their abdomen, essentially. And it takes a colony as a whole. These bees have to ingest 7 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So honey's great. Beeswax is great. It's all good, but it takes a lot of honey to make some beeswax.
Gotcha.
And you block that up and people buy it, right?
Yeah, yep,
As
for
a
sure.
byproduct of the honey process.
Yeah,
right?
and we make candles out of it. You can check it out on Instagram, the Keeper's Candle. I'm gonna plug my
Nice.
stuff here.
No, well, you got a spot at the end too. You can plug your stuff.
I
Don't
would forget. I would forget. Yeah,
I can edit out if I don't like it.
yeah. So, so it's a great byproduct. People use it as like if you have a stubborn drawer at home, it's a great lubricant for that type of thing. I know that some people who have like semi trucks that have canvas top and you have a reel, it's a lubricant on that type of thing too. If you're into propagating mushrooms, wax is a great spore starter, I guess.
Gotcha.
Shiitake and that type of thing. I'm not too. I know some people who have bought it for that, bought beeswax for that. I'm just trying to think about what most people buy beeswax for.
Right.
I'm really fond of these things that I would like to make. Is like it's a cloth, but it's dipped in beeswax, and it makes it like formable, so you can use it as a cover for a bowl. So if you got
I've
like,
seen those.
yeah,
We've actually had one at our house, and
Yeah.
it's like it's reusable.
Yeah, it's
like
great.
Saran wrap, but
Oh,
yeah,
you can
it's
reuse it,
literally
reuse it.
like terry cloth or something, some sort of cloth. That,
and then when it
then
gets
just-
cold, it like hardens
Yeah,
up, right? And that's
yeah.
what forms like over your bowl in the fridge.
wow.
yeah, and
it's super- it's actually
wax
pretty sweet.
and wax is antibacterial by nature, so it's a great cover.
Wow.
Less likely to get a moldy cover, even
So
if you leave it
say
in there.
reusable, like you wash it,
You
or
can
no?
wash it. Yeah, you can wash it.
like in dish soap, or
Like
in the
warm
dishwasher.
water. Yeah.
really?
This sounds like a product Merlin Mods needs to be stocking.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why they
We'll
don't.
production's at all time low. Cherry bee. We're so focused on beekeeping. When it's time to shuffle the bees in and out of the cherries, it's like you work at night and then you work at day during the day, and given holiday weekend, it's kind of time to kick back a little bit. But yeah, it's certainly I would call it the busiest time of the year. But I do find myself saying when things slow down. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to those bees. We'll get those at the Myrtlein Mods though. That would be a perfect product for there.
Yeah. And
Shouts
candles.
out
Candles?
to Myrtlein
And
Mods.
candles.
I think they have quite a few candles there too. But
They're
they
actually
do.
looking for some fresh honey.
yeah,
They're a
I
little
need
low.
to.
We gotta get
I
some
have
bottled up. Or did you?
I have a case for them. I just need to get over there. So
Heck yeah.
life cycle of a worker bee. She's a builder. We'll call her.
Yep.
And there's a cool word in beekeeping called festooning, which means these bees, they're crazy. They have these feet that are hooked, so they can hook each other together, like those barrel of monkeys.
Monkeys in a barrel.
Yeah, but they can, in their colony, if they have a spot that they want to, cross comb, build a comb, they can all hook together and then just start excreting wax and using their other, legs to manipulate their way through the whole process. And that's called
That's
festooning.
sweet.
Yeah, festooning.
These
Interesting
are
word, yeah.
fascinating.
I'm telling you, we
They
are
really,
learning. We
they
are learning.
honestly are like, this is so
But
fascinating.
back to their
me.
feet, they can taste with their feet.
I wish
crazy.
I could do that.
Yeah.
How do they? Who does this kind of research? though?
Imagine
Who
landing
finds
on
that?
me
Who finds that out?
and just being like, oh, like I'm sweating.
Yeah, like
Just like, oh.
they just fall right off. Just
Yeah, they just immediately sting me.
they're like I have to end it. I can't move on. From
Oh my
this.
gosh.
What do you do to keep track of the age of the queens?
I
Do you
use
have a process? Or
I use a paint pen. I used to mark the queen. Now I just mark the box that she lives in.
okay.
It's a lot easier to find her if you mark her. If you got a paint pen, you just got to catch her and put a little dot on her. But I don't do that. I love the challenge. You got to go find her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, I know when she was installed, just because I write on the front of the hive, and I know, like, I have cousins who breed queens in Georgia, and their mark is BBQ. Their business name is Brother Bee Queen because it's two brothers raising queens, and I put the date on there. BBQ was added. What's today? 5/23. I don't even know the date.
24.
24. Lost a day. Anyway, happy Memorial Day weekend, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You actually used to go out there and Mr. Miyagi it, catch the bee in your hand.
no, so the queen, once she's established, she can fly away even when she's swelled up. She can't fly very good, but like she's crawling around on the frame. So I just grab her. And I mean, you could pull up my Instagram. I got videos of that.
Yeah, his Instagram is super cool
Just
where he
catch
does
her.
he'll do you'll just videotape
Trav will travel.
and he'll just videotape it and he says, "Find the queen."
Oh yeah. That's
I
just
love
like
those
the queen
ones.
fight. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
like
then I'm
Where's
always,
Waldo.
and then me and my wife were laying in bed at like 10 o'clock and we're like screenshotting it. And we're holding the screen. I'm like, "Where is this?"
yeah,
And then eventually we find it.
yeah. It's good stuff.
It's fun.
Any slow mo videos of you actually grabbing the queen with your hand?
There's video of me catching queens, but no, I don't think I have any.
What's your
slow-mo.
Instagram?
Trav will travel.
So I don't even know if we explained, I guess, how, right? How we're involved with each other, or how we know each other. Because Cherry Bee does all the pollination for our farm at Cherry Key. They are technically separate entities.
Yes, they are. Yeah, it's a great partnership to have for the beekeeper and the cherry farmer. When you look at how volatile farming is in general, an outlet for beekeepers. People think honey, right? When you think of beekeeping, you think honey, but now pollination, because farming has become rather industrious. Crops that rely on pollination need more bees than nature provides in one certain area. You don't have enough bees to pollinate 160 acre set of cherries to produce a proper yield. In some crops, obviously, you don't need bees, and that's for the farmer. That's a bonus because they don't need to pay a crazy dude to come bring some bugs out to pollinate their crop. But yeah, so we're in a good partnership in the sense of pollination's a little bit less of a gamble for a beekeeper. If you're dealing with somebody who's worth their word, you bring them bees, they give you a paycheck, for bringing them bees for pollination. Whereas when you go out and set your bees out and put boxes on for honey, they might not always make honey. It might be too dry, or it might rain for a week during something in bloom. The black locust last year. I'm hurt almost about it. Like it rained through this whole bloom, and the bloom was just beautiful. The bees never got to fly, and didn't make any honey on it.
Yeah, we were a little
Might
low.
be 40 degrees all week long during
You guys get it.
pollination
Yeah,
weather.
Like
exactly.
last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I don't know how much of it was open, but that warm weather we had before that was, man, that was beautiful. And they were toting it. They were in the trees for sure.
But unfortunately, it was like
Back to 40. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't. And definitely in apples, we did not have the amount of bloom open like the tart cherries did, or the sweet cherries.
Good thing we dropped like triple the amount of bees.
That
needed
yeah,
in
there's
there.
a lot more per acre than necessary. I was just telling them that before you got here. I was like, you were taking them out of the cherry orchards because we're petal forward. They don't need to be in there anymore, and in that we were just going to overload the apples. And they were out
They were flying.
2 days. I think we got 2 days this week that were pretty decent.
Even
So,
like this afternoon, they
Does
probably flew a little bit.
do you ever worry about it getting too cold for the bees?
No, not really at all, unless I don't think they have the food resources stored up in their colony. Bees can survive sub-zero temperatures as long as they have the numbers to stay warm. They go into a dormant phase where they will cluster together and just vibrate and create heat. So as long as they have the proper ventilation to keep moisture away, they don't have a high mite load, a parasitic load.
Right. Mites are a problem for bees.
Yeah, number one issue that we battle is Varroa destructor is the scientific name. Pretty easy to remember with such a diabolical name.
Yeah.
But yeah, this mite is like a dirty little syringe. It transfers different types of diseases, as well as, feeds on the fat resources of these bees. And over time, they reproduce and breed in the larval phase of the bee. So like when they're totally defenseless, before they're even really morphed into a bee, this parasite's already crawling around on them, feeding on them, and it spreads wingless disease, which is exactly as bad as it sounds for a bee.
Dang.
Legless disease for humans.
Yeah, you're pretty much useless, unfortunately. I mean, I guess.
How often do you have this mite problem? Or
It's terminal across the United States, and actually just recently has been. The last stand was Australia didn't have it, and there might be a few remote islands here and there, but yeah, they finally got it. We got it in the late 80s here in the United States, and there was some crazy things happening. People just burning colonies trying to get rid of it.
Yep.
Pretty crazy learning curve, and the same things happening again in Australia, and they're poisoning colonies everywhere trying to prevent it. But there's better ways to go about it, and it's not. I don't know. I don't know if it's feasible because there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians in that one.
Yeah.
The same thing that happened here, but now it's like they have it, so they just need to learn how to live with it, which is kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
What brings on the mite problem?
Well, I mean, bees are so social, and they're almost impossible to eliminate, which is what I mean by the entire continent is terminal. So even if I keep my mite load, like I can't get rid of all of the mites. It's not possible. And then they reproduce at an alarming rate. So what that means is that like even if I carry like a 0.0 something % mite load, which is possible, it's not that hard. Bees are so social that unfortunately one colony that I don't manage a mile or two away could be the vector to restarting a mite issue in my whole operation. And it's kind of a weird thing. Some research has found that like there's a lot of Varroa resistant genetics in bees, but like 80% of most operations mite load is carried in like 20% of their colonies. So there's like always just a few here and there that carry a high load. And then when you come into the high stress period of fall and winter, these mites spread from the drone bees to the worker bee larvae. And then, there's a lot of robbing in the fall because it's dearth. There's no flowers for them to be working. Mm-hmm. So then it's spreading everywhere, to other colonies really fast. And because they're so social, fighting over food, literally fighting over food. So it's an easy vector. It's an easy, parent to parent host to host for the parasites.
So when you talked about how like a guy down the road, what's the spacing like? How do you guys know who else has bees in the area so you guys don't put hives too close together?
So the idea
is there an app for that?
No, the idea is
group chat.
you don't want to. You used to have to register yards with the state, which a lot of states do that, especially the major honey production yards, which would be North and South Dakota and Montana. I don't know if you have to register your yards in Idaho, but I mean those big Great Plains, where it's like clover and canola for miles. They make a crazy amount of honey. You have to have a yard registered, and you can't be within 2 miles of another beekeeper. And it used to be that here, and I don't really know what happened. If it was just like the hobbyist boom and there's just too many people keeping bees. The idea is that you don't want, from a commercial standpoint, you don't want too many bees in one area, and then you're just feeding them instead of letting them make honey, because there's too much competition in one area, which is why we spread them out.
What do you feed a bee?
Well, a lot of things depending on what we think they might be lacking. You can supplement them with liquid sucrose. I mean, you can, just like us, you can give them high fructose corn syrup and they'll be okay with that. But the better option is real sugar, like liquid sucrose. And we'll add probiotics, prebiotics, the same stuff we would, not necessarily the exact same stuff, but a lot of the same types of things that we would do to better our gut health. We will do that. Like after I get them out of the cherries, I'll hit them with a microbial blend, just to try and help them battle through whatever they may or may not have ran into.
Interesting.
When you think about like what I'm doing with these bees, it's amazing that they're even alive. They've traveled since February. They've traveled on a truck over 7,000 miles. That's not even flight time, right? And it's like they're on their fourth spring. They started February in California, near Fresno area, where it's just almonds as far as you can see. So it's a giant monocrop out there, and they're exposed to stuff that needs to get applied for farmers to protect their crop, right? It's just part of the business. And we go from there to the citrus down in Florida, and same thing. And then from there we go to Dowagiac. That's spring number 3. So they've already been pushed pretty hard before we even get them up here. But they're also, they're doing good. Like they grow fast, but what we see is like a little bit of damage in the larva, like a few birth defects come along here and there. And if it's a like a real bad day, and it's usually like I said, brood damage, but you might see a few colonies actually be totally wiped out from it. But normally it's something that you can work them through with supplemental feeding, whether it's microbials or liquid sucrose. Actually, all these things help. And then if it's like a pollen dearth, I'm sorry, I'm moving back and forth from this mic here, Talon. You're gonna have to edit the audio. But if
That sounds fine.
If it's like the lack of pollen dearth, pollen's great. We can supplement pollen with that.
So how do you feed them?
So in this box with this, you see these boxes out here. There's frames, and then there's also it's a trough. It's in there. It's a trough. We pour a couple gallons of liquid sucrose in our blend of amino acids and proteins and all the good stuff. And we'll put something like chopped straw over top of it, because when they come jumping in there, we don't need them drowning in the sucrose, because sometimes they're just hungry, just jump in there and they can't swim.
Like Steve when he gets 16 eggs in the morning at breakfast.
16 eggs. It's more than a baker's dozen. You?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Zach. I looked at.
That's all right. People get us confused a lot.
Yeah.
Steve, you don't eat 16 eggs.
I almost did that morning.
Maybe in like a frittata.
I probably got like 12 to 14.
Steve does the carnivore diet, so he's big on the eggs.
Oh, right on, dude. Yeah. Well, I mean, there is no better source of protein than just meat. Eggs probably the cleanest source of protein.
It's good.
Yeah.
Sorry, that got off. That was
No,
definitely off.
So,
Definitely off.
no, that's interesting. Yeah.
I'd like you, Steve, to ask him about your new way of applying fungicide.
Oh, I know. I was waiting for the right time, but so I was having this conversation with this grower over the last couple of years. We've talked about it, and his thing is like he has blueberries, and he gets mummyberry shoot strikes every year, and he thinks the bumblebees are spreading it, which is possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're fuzzy little bees, man.
I know.
They're meant to pick things up and carry things on their fuzzy little
Explain what
bottles.
the shoot strikes are.
So it's
Thank you,
just
Zach.
so like mummyberry is really interesting in blueberries. It's like once you have it, these blueberries like kind of harden off into like they almost look like black pumpkins, and they fall off and they land on the ground, and they overwinter down there. And in the spring they grow mushrooms, and then they shoot fungus up into your bloom. It's like the same time, so then it's
Wow.
constantly.
That's interesting.
So his thing was he read once that you can get bees that are coated with like a fungicide.
Yeah. As an applicant.
Yes, and
And
see?
I thought he was crazy.
No,
and Trav's
you
like,
guys.
oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
no,
normal
it's
thing.
they've studied that, and I think they've tried that, and it's feasible. I think that as a delivery system, it might not be the most cost effective,
Yep.
but yeah, it's a totally possible thing. I don't know. Yeah, and it's just funny how some things are with bees. Like you could spray it all over them, and they just do fine, and then sometimes they just don't. So
yeah.
yeah, that's a really interesting take on how to use bees
Right.
to make them work for you.
I mean, every crop that's in bloom has something after it, right?
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
So if you got these things flying around every blossom,
Mhm.
and
While they're there,
they
they're
could be
already there.
hurting, or you
Right,
just treat
right.
them and they're helping.
Yeah, that I can't. What were they? When you saw that? Did you see what they were doing that on? Was it almonds they were using?
No,
that, or-
I just talked to a grower that had read about it or
yeah,
something
yeah,
somewhere.
and I read about it too, and I can't remember what the source was.
Yeah.
but,
I found it very interesting, though.
right. It's just it'd be hard to get most commercial beekeepers on board with it, just because it's such a battle to begin with.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you put something on it that they don't do well with, then you just hurt yourself.
Right, and
Right,
you might have
right,
just wasted a bunch of product too,
Yep.
besides the actual the bee. But yeah, just that product too. I don't know. I mean, I'm all for it if somebody's got the extra bees to do that.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy that the things that we've historically have used bees. You know, if in a military standpoint, they've actually you can train bees by association, right? Introduce them to a little bomb residue, give them some sugar. Bomb residue, give them some sugar. All of a sudden, you got these bees. They know what bomb residue means, and you can go release them out in a desert and find an IED on the side of the road instead of somebody else finding them.
That's great. It's like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
Wherever they ring the bell and then feed them the food, and then eventually you ring the bell. And
I don't know if they still do it in London, but in the airport in England, they just take one bee in like a little matchbox with a magnifying glass as like bomb detection. And the thing about a bee is when she knows she's going to eat something, she gets excited. And when bees get excited, they stick their butt in the air and they stick out their proboscis, which is their tube-like tongue, right? And so if I'm a bomb detection guy in the London airport and I got this little matchbook and I'm looking at this bee in this matchbook and she all of a sudden thinks she's going to eat, well, I guess I got to flag that bag. And allegedly, they were using that as like an alternative. And you can train thousands of bees. They last for a couple weeks, and it's a lot cheaper than trying to train a dog.
wow.
When you just associate the two. And I don't know the whole trainable thing. I don't know, but it's crazy. Like I said, bees are pretty
That's some
amazing.
crazy stuff.
Dude,
going
And
on.
you know,
Bees
like that nose
Are
thing.
amazing.
Yeah, their ability to smell is certainly amazing at their size. You know, you think of a bear and its ability. Well, it makes sense when you look at the size of a schnoz or a head on a bear. It's like even a dog. You know, big old schnoz. But bee, hardly even see that nose on there.
Right. So you talked a couple minutes ago about traveling bees, right? So I don't think a lot of people realize that we put them on pallets, or they're on pallets. That's how we pick them up and move them. And you put them on semi trucks and you throw nets over them, and they drive across the country. And there's a lot of preparation, a lot of timing. Those truck drivers, they don't stop. And depending on the climate that they go through, because obviously you can imagine driving out to California, you're going through some hot places, and like you said, they like to stay warm and they can overheat. Explain a little about the travel process, how many hives you can get on a truck.
Yeah. So Usually for local travel, we use like a smaller truck to transport our colonies around to orchards or honey yards. But when we're going long distances cross country, we hire tractor trailers with flat deck semis, and usually most of them carry their own nets and their own boards and straps. So we can, all these bees are on pallets, so we can stack them. And what we'll do is we'll stack them up nice and even and level. And you can, depending on the size of the truck and where you're going with weight restrictions, you can put a lot of bees on one colony or on one truck, like a 53-foot flat deck. If you're just running single colonies, you can put close to 700 colonies on one semi. Usually what I do is I'm running double deeps. I put 408 colonies on one truck. And traditionally when we're going south, that's usually like all they, as far as weight, that's all they can haul. So they ride well for the most part when you're going from one end to the other, a couple thousand miles. But it's important that the driver knows what he's doing. During the day, bees want to fly. So you got to keep air on them because they're just producing heat. And if you're not moving, they're not really able to breathe because they're all stacked in there together. And as you can imagine, there's a net on them, so they're trying to fly. But if there's wind, you know, if you're going 55, 60 miles an hour, they're less likely to want to fly and leave their colony with the net right there and the wind blowing. But at nighttime, they don't want to fly. So the truck driver can go to sleep. You know, he can stop and get fuel and get himself situated for the next day, you know, try and get 700 to 800 miles in a day. And, you know, thankfully, the United States classifies bees as livestock. So they don't have to use an electronic logbook. And if they have to drive a little bit longer, something happens, they're not restricted to the
Interesting.
Can you imagine stopping midday on the side of the road because you're
catastrophic.
off your hours?
It'd be inhumane, you know, is all it would be. But so it does have to happen. Like the bees, I had a load coming back from California this year, and I just before I say this, I always hire some of the best truck drivers with the best equipment, so new stuff. And on the way back from California, he blew a steer tire, which in itself is almost like it's the worst case scenario because trying to hang on to a semi when you lose a steer tire is not easy. And when you got bees stacked on the back, oftentimes it gets tipped over on the side of the road. But he didn't. He held on to it. He had the bee suits, the wherewithal to call the local fire department because he's going to need a lot of water to keep him cool. And he called the mechanic, the mobile mechanic, and got the tire changed and got back rolling. And that's why we pay him, you know, $4.25 a mile. But yeah, so the field force, the bees that want to fly, they don't usually make it, but each colony as a whole usually comes out just fine. You know,
so that's who all the dead bees are that are always
those
on
are
the deck of the truck
old
after you
field
take 'em
bees.
off.
Yeah, those are the older worker bees, what I call field bees. They just want to go out and work, right? That's just what they're thinking they need to do, and they don't know any better, unfortunately. But you know, we try and keep water on them. They use water. They drink a ton of water, just like you and I do. And they, like I don't know if I mentioned this on camera, but you know, they have 2 stomachs, so they can fill up those stomachs with water and bring it back to the hive. And just like geothermal cooling, they can excrete that and fan it and keep the inside of their hive cool. But bees relatively like the heat. They do well in heat. But yeah, what else? I don't know. I was got a little tangent. Oh, trucking. Yeah. So some guys, they push them even further than what I do. You know, they would go to Wisconsin for cranberry pollination after this. And that's a tough one. You know, we were talking about blueberries. Blueberries and cranberries are kind of hard ones to pollinate. The bees don't do as well as they do as like on cherries and apples and almonds. Like, and the almond bloom is, if you don't pick up a bunch of fungicide, the almond bloom is great for bees. The orange bloom, great for bees. Cherries, apples, great for bees. Blueberries, hard on the bees. And cranberries too. Just, they don't come out of those they don't make a lot of honey on them. The pollen isn't. It must not be protein rich. I'm not sure. I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what it is, but I just know that they don't like it as much. And I try and reason with a lot of the guys. They're doing the opposite of what they should be doing when they're farming. They're cutting down all the flowers around their crop, but really, bees prefer a diverse amount of flowers. So, like, you want to have a good buffet.
Right.
Basically
You want like
what you want.
dandelions, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, and it basically anything, So like my message to the blueberry farmers and the cranberry farmers would be to, leave the Dutch clover and the dandelions. Obviously the dandelions are done when the cranberries are being pollinated. It's like July.
Gotcha.
But yeah, leave the dandelions. That brings them into the orchard, keeps them in the orchard, and they're going to bounce back and forth. They do that. I don't know the university studies, but there's been a few studies that have actually proven that now. And obviously, beekeepers aren't keen on studies, but many will tell you that they bees prefer, just like us. We can't just be eating cheeseburgers all day, I mean, I'd love to, but
I mean, you can, but-
listen. I like tacos. I like fish and chips, and I seem to do better not just eating the same thing unless it's something really healthy. Like if I'm eating salmon, just straight smoked salmon for like a week straight.
Yep.
I lose like 10 pounds. I almost get a 6-pack without even working out. It's amazing.
That protein.
Yeah, just good, clean energy.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Wilbur Ellis, partnering with specialty crop growers for over 100 years, helping you make the most of your fields with trusted agronomic support and custom solutions.
So you mentioned mites being the biggest danger to bees.
Yeah, that's our number one. It's been the number one issue for a while.
What's number
now.
2?
It would be probably
Pesticides?
a toss up between habitat loss and I would say not just pesticide use, but just application practices. I almost don't even want to blame it on neonicotinoids like everybody else does. I think that we're at the point when it comes to, I don't mean to get too deep, but when it comes to feeding the people on this planet, industrial farming is necessary, and it can be done in ways that are still beneficial to all parties involved. But yeah, I think that is a factor. But habitat loss is huge, and the big thing about that is like that like never comes back. Once you pave paradise and put up a parking lot, it's there for a while.
Yeah,
Shouts out to Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, we change a lot of things. We'll leave things out during the bloom while the bees are in the orchard, and then if we have to do something, if we have a problem, we switch all the spray guys and we work at night. And they'll switch their whole shift just to be able to make sure that we're not causing any extra harm or damage to the bees while they're out in the orchard.
Yeah, and that's another. I think we were talking about collaborations with,
Working
your
with farmers,
Yeah, it's like there's much to gain and much to lose for both sides, and
it's like you said, working with the right people and
and
just having an understanding, and
the smallest communication goes a long way too. It's like, hey, do you know it's time for the cocktail for the apples? It's
time to get
the
them
bees out.
Yep.
Travis mentioned having as much food available in the orchards and stuff. Do you guys wait to hedge your cherries until pollination time is over? Or
No, we start before and do it through.
Okay.
And most of the time they're there, and the hedging gets done usually, and if depending on the size of the farm, it's done in a day. So I don't think it affects the bees too much.
No,
and those flowers are still open on the ground.
Yeah,
even if we cut them full bloom, so they'll still be all over those flowers because they're still viable while the branches.
Yeah, I've seen them pollinate
Before they dry
branches.
out.
Literally, I've seen them pollinate branches.
They don't know any different. They just because it's sitting on the ground, they don't
Yeah.
know. We do take care of all of the dandelions in the orchard, though. We do put a little spray down on the grass in the falls that keeps the orchard. It keeps the weeds out of the grass too, so the orchard is
easier
nice.
to manage.
Yep.
I don't know how much you guys are putting to take care of the dandelions, but I still see a lot of dandelions.
Yeah,
so
it's.
I couldn't even imagine
we
if you
got a
didn't.
lot of acres, so we choose like 400 or 500 that we just that we take care of each.
Intermittently.
It's a big loop.
It's probably a good idea. I mean, yeah, just the way that plant, it's pretty amazing. You know,
Yeah.
that thing will grow in a crack in the concrete.
Anywhere
Yeah.
you don't want them.
And allegedly an amazing plant, like to ingest and super good for you, antibacterial. I don't know much about it. I heard people are trying to bring
Sounds
back
like you know a
dandelion.
lot more about it than I do.
Allegedly, you can just eat them babies. They're good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you seen any positive changes or increased awareness for the protection of? Because there's been a big movement of save the honey or help save our pollinators.
Yeah.
Do you think that's making? Do you think that?
I think there's
movement's
people who
making a
are aware
difference?
of it, and I think I do think that like the no mow May thing's great because when you're at in this grow zone, you know, dandelions are some of the first food for bees. You know, it's great. It's great nectar. It's really good pollen. Bees build up really well on dandelions. So the awareness part, yeah, people know they not to mow or save the dandelions. I think it is making a difference. But at the same time, I think it comes down to the beekeeper just properly managing what he's got in front of him, and yeah, you can look to outer places because the bees are so important to everybody. But you know, ultimately, I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling. Ultimately, if you can manage the mites and you are aware of when they need to be fed or when something's going on, you know, you can intervene with bees, which is great. Except, you know, with mites, they're sneaky because you know they're in the larva, and when you're looking at the bees, you know, you might not see how bad of a situation you have because most of the mites are in the larva, which is capped off.
Gotcha.
Now, just before that, you could look at a lot of bees, or I'm sorry, right after that, you could look at a lot of bees and see a lot of mites on bees. Now, when you're starting to see mites, like physically see them, you probably have an issue, and you might be terminal. Yeah, it might be it might be terminal, or you might be like me, and you might see one every once in a while and just freak out because you're so trained to seeing them. And I'm just constantly doing what we call a mite roll, which is I will shake, you know, about 300 bees off of a frame of brood, which is like I know a lot of these bees were probably just born, so there's a good chance they might have mites. And so I'll shake them into a little cup, and a couple ways you can do it. You can roll them in powdered sugar, and it shocks the mite, and the mite releases, but it's really hard to count the mites. So what I do is I do an alcohol wash, and you know the bees are dead, everything's dead, but it's really easy to tell how many mites I've collected off that 300 bees, and then I can, you know, if you have 3 mites per 100 bees, you're at a high point in your threshold where you need to really start thinking about intervening on the mite situation.
Wow. That's crazy.
So that's how we test, and that's how we know whether or not we need to do something about the mites.
You like insecticide them or what?
Yeah. So,
Is there something that kills mites and won't kill the bees?
Well, not really. No. I mean, it's like chemo, but we're dealing with a superorganism, so a lot of bees die with almost any of the ones. So there are organic compounds that can be used.
Okay.
And there's non-organic, and ironically, the non-organic ones are like the least devastating to the colony. So a lot of times I'll use the non-organic stuff, and I won't use it when it's honey making time.
Yeah.
And I won't ever apply it to any of the boxes that I make honey on. So, the active ingredient, and the one thing specifically that we use is amatraz. And it's a cattle grade insecticide, but it's also used in bees, and it's been approved for use in bees. And it's good to knock down bees. However, or I'm sorry, mites, but mites build a resistance to this product.
Yeah.
So you have to switch it up. You can't just keep using that.
Mm-hmm.
We use formic acid. We use oxalic acid, which is like wood bleach. I think you can pick it up at Menards or Home Depot for you folks not watching in the Midwest or listening. There's not a Menards down in Florida.
You're gonna be looking. You're gonna be driving a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with those organic treatments, you see a high bee loss, but you get a good kill, like all around.
Yeah.
Does a good job.
Yeah, it does. But it's a necessary evil. And what we've been doing, so we don't have to constantly treat, is specifically me. I look to beekeepers who are way better at this than I am, who have been selectively breeding for what we call Varroa sensitive hygienics, which means these bees are starting to learn the smell of a reproductive mite. And if they smell a reproductive mite, they will open up the capped larva and remove the larva and the mite. So the infected larva, they remove it, just kick it out the front door. And with that, what that it does is like your colony count, your flight force, you might have a lot less bees, but you don't have to treat for mites as often or at all, which is
That's
ideal.
incredible.
But when we're talking about pollinating, we want as many bees as we can have in the colony, and if it means that I have to use
Hold
a couple
off.
different treatments.
Yep.
But really, though, I am starting to try and breed Varroa sensitive hygienic stock into our operation, just because it's good. You should do that, just so they have some sort of natural
Defense.
fight to it. Some people have called them ankle biters. There's like a different type. There's a few different types of sensitive stock, hygienic stock, where allegedly they will be able to bite the mite off of them, which is different than the smell the mite.
Yeah.
But I'm not too familiar with that breed, the ankle biters. You can ask 10 different beekeepers the same question, and you will get 14 different answers. It's a farm. It's a farm thing.
I think that's a farm
That's
thing
a farm
too.
thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely a farm.
Yeah.
thing.
I went to the Benzie show and did a pruning thing out there, a seminar.
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah,
think I mentioned it before.
Yeah.
And Jason, he asked me, what did you learn about pruning? And I said that everyone prunes their trees differently. And
They're all right.
And everyone's right. They would be like someone they'd have asked a guy to come prune, and he would prune, and some guy in the crowd's like, give me the pruners. I'm going to show you how you're supposed to prune this tree. And it's just like constantly just turn. I mean, everyone does their own thing too, but there's a consensus, like you're saying, and there's people who do the research and do the cool stuff and try it out, and most of the time it's for the best.
Yeah, and most of these guys that I'm talking about have a doctor before their name.
Right.
Yeah.
Good people to listen to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of the time, yes.
We have barely talked about honey.
Yeah,
Let's
there's
talk
a lot
about
more to
fast
bees
forward
than
into
just
honey.
honey.
Yeah.
Right? Why we got to rush into this?
I know.
mean,
We're jumping
I'm
forward.
just
I got-
working my way across the line here.
With all the hives in the orchard right now, what's your typical day?
it's
What's
so we're still, and it just it doesn't really matter where they are. We just keep on working them. But we just have to be, I guess, depending on when they're going to be moved. I've been splitting them and adding boxes to them if I think they need it. So I've been just making bees with the bees we have, and just kind of, dropping a few in the apples to boost them up, and what we call making splits, where I'll go in and I'll see a colony that's at what we call a double deep, and it's 2 of those deep brood nests, and I'll crack it in the middle, and if it's full of bees and has brood, so hatching bees in the top and the bottom, I'll take the top box and put a lid on the bottom box, take the top box along with a bunch of other ones from that spot, and move them miles away so the bees don't drift back to the original spot, because they will if you don't. They have such a great memory, they'll fly out and be like, oh, I need to go this way home. And they'll all drift back to that original box, that first box. Now, get them away and then find out if they need a queen or not. once I know that they're queened right, I'll add a box back, and if they need to be fed back up, if they need, you know, be supplemented with a little blast of something. But you know, still right now we're good. Like there's not much cherries. There's still a few dandelions, but like the autumn olive is about to open up, and it's amazing how many people in Michigan don't even know what autumn olive is. It blows my mind. I talk about it, and people are like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "You know that bush that just grows
It's
everywhere and
taking
has the red berries on it all
Taking
summer?"
over.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Been
yeah.
labeled invasive,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes,
Well,
it is.
do you know
I mean, how
that,
could it not
you
be?
know how that came about?
No.
The DNR, actually, years ago, was, I believe, handing this plan out and telling people to plant it.
Great cover.
Great
boy.
cover for wildlife.
Yeah, small game cover, and it's true. It really is.
It really
incredible.
is. Oh,
Yeah.
rabbits love it. Deer love it.
Pheasants will get in there and hide from the hawks.
But it's just
Yes.
now it's out of control.
And now they're like, oh, shoot.
Well, yeah. Now the DNR literally has
Telling
to
you
like
how to kill
remove
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're running around their state parks like by in Yuba. There they had to mulch and all the conservancies are having to pay money to have this stuff not necessarily eradicated, but just managed because it's
They're supporting local business.
you know the birds eat the berries and the berries grow everywhere.
Yeah.
You know they drop them and
Oh, yeah,
they're
they're-
already germinating in the passings.
We found some
Yes.
up in the Porcupine Mountains, like the first
Oh,
time.
yeah.
It's a long way to go.
It's not very long if you're flying a bird.
Straight,
That's
right?
right. The way the bird flies,
Hey,
that's
you know,
pretty
the
straight.
crow
You know,
flies.
a bee will fly, you know, up to 5 miles in one way and make, you know, multiple trips if it's worth it. I just learned a goose will go like 1,500 miles in a shot. Like get up in the jet stream
Yep,
and
just-
go land in the Gulf of Mexico from Michigan.
So bees
Must
aren't
be
going
nice.
up, so bees aren't going up in the jet stream.
No, they don't fly that high, unfortunately.
Gulf
Or
of
else
what?
I just send them all down the jet stream to Florida, and we wouldn't have to pay so much in trucking.
Do you have to physically go out and inspect every hive every day then?
Well, I don't do every hive every day,
Okay.
but I try and get through as many colonies as I can in a day, and it's usually like 400, 500 on a good day. I can get through a load of bees.
It's so far to drive, though.
It's
When
a
they're
lot
in all
of
the
driving
orchards,
when they're
Spread out
spread out.
how
yeah.
far?
Honestly, when they're in the orchards is better than
closer.
when I have them spread
Because you're
out
like
in the
out
honey
in like
areas.
Mansalona
Yeah,
and then out
yeah,
in Grand.
Leelanau, yeah, it's miles, lots of miles. But yeah, so I try and get through and inspect them all. And normally, I don't have to come back to them right away. They're good for, depending on what I'm doing to them, they're good for maybe a week to. If they're making honey, you know, I might not come back to them for 2 weeks. If I'm hoping to come back and they're full and just need more boxes.
Okay.
But sometimes you might end up just taking a few boxes off and digging into them and finding out that they swarmed out from underneath those boxes, and you got to
Yeah.
requeen them and you start all over again. It's
It's a surprise every time you open one up.
It's kind of cool. The exposure you get as a commercial beekeeper, like I said, you're opening up hundreds of colonies a day, whereas a hobbyist might open up one a week.
Yeah.
So for people, I guess if I could give anybody who's like somebody who wants to get seriously into bees, go work for a guy who works bees commercially near you, and you'll have exposure. Like, you know, I mean, it's be a full-on university lesson in bees
Nice.
in about a week. You'll look at more bees in a week than you will probably for the rest of your life, if you do that, if you decide to go.
So, do you travel with the bees? Like when they're
Yeah,
in California,
yeah.
when they go to.
So growing up, I used to go out there, and it was fun. Travel was great. Get to see the countryside, which is another reason why I got into it. You know, it was a lot of fun to travel and get out of the cold, go south for the winter. We would go to Mississippi for the winter, and
So the bees winter down south.
yes, that's correct. Or out west in California. So growing up, we would go from Michigan to California, California to Mississippi. Mississippi, we would kind of branch both ways from there. We would go to Maine for blueberries and Wisconsin for cranberries, and then a bunch of specialty crops here in Michigan. So the operation that I was working with growing up, when I left there, they were at like, 10,000 colonies. So they had a lot of bees going a lot of different directions. They were in 3 different time zones and pollinating 3 different crops, 4 or 5 different crops. Actually, when you think about the vegetables in Mississippi, there was a lot of produce down there. I mean, but boy, Mississippi's hot and it rains. Like I've never seen it rain harder than Mississippi. Thunderstorms pop up out of nowhere and just dump down on you.
Yeah. So you still travel with them?
Yeah. So I don't go to California anymore. I go through a broker who's
Okay.
just another beekeeper who, he's in contact and in contract with almond growers, with
Okay,
the growers, and he's responsible for receiving, spreading, and then picking them up and putting
So
them back
you're
on the truck.
trusting your
That's correct.
bees
I
with a stranger.
not necessarily a stranger, because thankfully I've been relatively well connected into the business.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it is that. A lot of people will even do this on handshake deals where they'll bring their bees, and they won't get paid. And it's sad to see that. But I always tell people who are going out there or doing anything like that is get it in writing. Especially even if it's someone a relative or anything like that. Make an agreement, because with friends and family, things get muddled together, and it's just like do something cut and dry when it's business.
Yeah.
And execute it, and then nobody has any bad blood.
Yep.
But yeah, so
Interesting.
I give my bees to some stranger. And
Yes.
he gets them out on the trees, and they do what they need to do, and it's all good. We get them back, and they're usually great coming out of almonds. Like I said, that pollen and that nectar, they build really well on almond trees. And then when we get them to Florida, we split them again. Just they're big. They got a lot of bees in them. Time to make bees with the bees you have.
Yep.
And that's really probably the one great redeeming factor about bees is like, yeah, we lose a lot, but they reproduce so fast. You can make a lot of bees with a few colonies, a few really strong colonies. You can really increase your numbers if you have the knowledge, but it's really just labor. Like I can give a guy, if you got a dude from 1860 in here, just teleported him or whatever you want to call it, I could give him a smoker and a hive tool, and it's exactly the same as he be using back then. And
He be using.
he be using.
See what you did there?
He be keeping the same stuff. And he could go out there and nothing's changed. He could, we could work the colonies the same, the frames are the same. So it's primitive. So what I mean is like, if you're willing to put in the back work, you can make a lot of bees. It's a lot
Cool.
of manual labor for sure, but there's a lot more to it. Like the queen business is totally different industry. You're married to it. It's very time sensitive. It's a lot less manual labor, but you're still working with your hands quite a bit. It's definitely intricate work, because when you look at this egg that you're trying to collect and use to become a queen, it's like imagine a piece of rice that's the size of a grain of sand, and you got to use what we call a grafting tool to scoop it out of the bottom of that cell and put it in a queen cup. And it's tricky. You got to have a good set of eyes or a good set of glasses. And
It's fascinating. This whole
yeah,
thing. The whole
yeah.
everything bees do.
Yeah,
There's so much more into it than
Oh,
you
my
would
gosh.
than you would just think, right?
I love this. This is
It's so much
is
more
awesome.
in depth.
I love it.
I agree. I think I'm gonna do it until I die. Like I don't think I'm ever gonna retire from beekeeping. Something I hear beekeepers say a lot, like, "Oh, I can't wait to sell out," and it's like, number one, I'm not really gonna have much to sell out, but like, I don't want to stop doing this. This is great. Keeping
Right.
bees is kind of keeps you young. Like I said, there's some sweat involved in it. It's rewarding. Usually what you put in is what you get out for the most part, or you get a good result if you work hard at it. I get to be outside. Just love being outside. I think that's probably what most farmers enjoy most is just the outdoors. Like
Until it's winter, but you're in
Yeah.
Florida.
dude.
Right.
Yeah, it's I'm a young snowbird, and the bees are they're snow bees.
There's no bees.
So you do overwinter with them in Florida.
I do go to Florida.
Your wife and daughter go down there.
Yeah,
with you,
you
right?
know
Yep.
what is that
Nice.
was is a learning experience, but we made it happen, and we're gonna improve on that this next trip. It's gonna be a little bit more smooth. It's tough,
I can't imagine.
moving the whole crew down there, but we'll iron it out.
Yeah.
It is an adjustment going from just doing your own
Yeah,
thing, and then you have a
yeah.
kid, and you're like,
Mhm.
well, I got to figure out how to
How to
Yeah.
bring
do
this-
everything I'm doing, plus be back at home more. And
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
it's
the
a
home
little-
How old is your
it's a little
daughter?
tough balance.
17 months.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, she's
yeah.
so it's new. We're still figuring.
It's
it
gonna
out.
be tough when she gets in school. I was
No, I
thinking,
know.
Like,
You're
she's gonna
exactly
start up
right.
here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be an adjustment all around, and we'll
Yeah.
see.
Maybe your wife can homeschool.
Yeah, we were thinking
Ooh.
about that. I can she just needs how to learn how to work bees. She won't need anything else, right?
That's all she needs.
She can count by fours because that's how many colonies are on a pallet.
Not a pallet.
Nice.
Yeah, and she'll be good. She'll be fine.
Put her right to work.
Yeah, I'll just make her count bees. She'll be able to count.
I always see like different colored boxes. Do they mean anything, or is it just what you decide to paint that one?
So there's a few things, is you can get what they call in the paint business oops paint, right? So it's cheap paint, usually ugly color, but
sometimes free.
Yeah, besides that part, multiple colors are beneficial for bees, finding their home.
Gotcha.
So not only do bees smell at like a crazy different level than us, they also see at a crazy different level than us. They see on the UV spectrum. So like they see colors that we don't even fathom, right? But when you got a bunch of pallets and you just moved them all and they're trying to figure out which one's theirs, well, if you got a red one sitting next to a white one, that's really helpful to them to figure out if they know that. I mean, they've been so I don't know how far we got into the lifespan of the worker bee. We were talking about them excreting wax, and then after they become a builder, we talked about festooning, and after they become that builder bee, the final phase is a worker bee, a field bee, where they fly out to work, and the colors on the boxes are really beneficial to the bees.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
It really helps them come back, get to where they need to be, and bury their.
So they're not all the same color, because then they'd be like,
Most of ours are all white.
Yeah, a lot of white boxes.
A lot of white. A couple grays in there.
Yeah, and there's some color out there. A fair amount of red and blue, and not a lot, but yeah.
So can we talk about honey now, or am I going to get chastised
I think
again
you
for
can
bringing
talk about
honey?
Yeah, I think we could talk about honey.
yeah, let's talk about honey. I mean, there's just so much to learn about bees. Now,
Yeah.
there's going to be so much to learn
How
about
long
honey.
have we been? Yeah, honey. Honey is a great byproduct to bees, just like wax, but honey tastes better and it's a lot easier to chew. Honey is made from nectar of plants and tree. Well, trees are plants. Getting into the weeds, they what they do is they collect the nectar from these flowers and put it in their stomachs, carry it home, and they pass it from bee to bee. Like the field bee passes it to the worker bee. And in that process of going into their stomachs and coming back out, they have a bunch of enzymes in their gut bacteria that gets mixed with that nectar, and it breaks down the sugars of the nectar. And the enzymes that are breaking down the sugar are like diastase and invertase, and just like regular enzymes that we also have. And that stabilizes the nectar. And then when that worker bee, passes it to the builder bee, the builder bee puts it in a cell. They fill the cells up, and when they're full, they'll fan the moisture out of it. So it's like 17% moisture, which means it won't ferment if it gets some sort of yeast or bacteria in it. Excuse me. So, So after they fanned it off, put it in the cell, fanned it off, they'll cap it. And then honey's stable and it won't spoil. It might turn solid. But excuse me.
We could do the crop update for a hot second while Travis is getting himself back together.
Yeah.
So the crop update.
What's going on out there? What do you guys see?
Not a lot of movement because we had such
Yeah.
a cold week. Literally about nothing happened.
I don't.
We've had some open bloom for
2 weeks.
forever.
Right.
yeah,
Nothing's really moved.
Not really at all. Just we had a little bit of a weird rain, but again, we're not really too worried about scab too much when the temperatures are as
40
low as they
degrees,
were.
yeah.
I know.
And when we get below 40, the fire
Persistent,
blight
but-
kind of, it's a non-factor when we get down into the low 40s.
Yeah.
So it's pretty chill. The cherries are we're definitely in petal fall, but we're past. We're starting to fill some shucks with cherries. Everyone should be able to start getting more of a grasp on what their crop looks like, because you can start to pinch those old flowers and feel if there's a cherry in there or not, and you can see it very easily.
Yeah.
So, a little exciting time usually if you have a lot of cherries. You're happy and you start looking in the
don't
flowers.
Go pinching too hard.
But don't.
Yeah.
I might not want to look too hard. Too hard right now. But so the crop update's short this year or this.
Well,
today.
The crop's short, I think.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely not going to be a bumper crop. I think. For
No
anybody.
limb breaking. As far as grapes go, they're getting their first leaves,
Nice.
just waking up. So
I have heard some of our southern Michigan crop is actually in pretty good shape.
even after the tornado,
Tony calls them quarter pounders. 250 pounds of cherries a tree.
really,
So you need 1,000 fill up the tank. He calls them quarter pounders.
wow,
That's good.
that makes sense.
So he says there's a couple of those out there on a couple farms, but so we got
Bees
some. We got
bees
some
must
fruit
have really
down
been
there.
working.
The bees are working hard in southern
Yeah, they
Michigan.
had the weather for it for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry about that little cough attack.
Oh no, you're good. It happens.
You hate to see it when it happens.
You hate
Yeah,
to see
right on
it.
So
He's back.
He's back.
talking about honey.
Where were we?
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Travis.
All right.
Hey, dude, press the button.
I gotta find it now. Hold on. And yes,
Oh,
Travis,
there's the
welcome.
grunts. Going wild.
back.
So after they make all
still
that
going.
honey and after they cap it with wax,
Yep.
I come and steal it.
Oh,
Yeah, and put it in a barrel.
We lost him.
Sorry.
This is probably a lot more talking than you do.
In general.
Yeah.
Ever.
yeah.
It's an hour straight of talking.
Sorry.
It's been doing great.
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Yep.
Everything's going fine. Everything's perfect.
But yeah,
So
I
you just
extract
go in
it.
there and steal it.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that I leave them a fair amount just to get them down to Florida.
Yeah.
But I'll pull it all off. And, we'll use centrifugal machines to spin it out of the cell after we've warmed it up so it flows a lot
It's a
easier.
liquid again. And
Yeah, yep. And then it goes into a barrel, and I either sell it or repackage it into smaller containers, that kind of thing. And,
Yep.
it goes to brewers, it goes to distillers, it goes to grocery stores. I really like when it gets turned into beer. And
Farm markets.
Yeah.
I like farm
local
markets,
markets.
too. Yep. Local honey.
Right.
Ingesting.
Let's talk about local honey.
Yeah, so it's important to support your neighbor, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, ingesting pollen locally is a great way to introduce your immune system to that pollen. I think they call it auto-inoculation, where, instead of just breathing it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot easier to get to know it than just eat it. And then allegedly, and actually, it's for sure, it's known that it relieves your allergy.
Interesting.
Yeah. The best thing is to actually eat pollen, where beekeepers we have pollen traps, and what it is these devices, when the bee walks in the front door, there's little brushes that brush the pollen off of her legs as she walks in. You can only leave it on a colony for so long because you don't want to take all of their
their
Right.
food. you
Right.
know. So, you collect a few here for a few days and you move it and empty it. And It's a tedious little program, but if, like my wife, she
Why
takes,
are you stealing their pollen?
well, it's good for your allergies. Is what I was
Gotcha.
getting at. Yeah, I really don't, but like,
Yeah, but it can be done.
yes, people do it. My wife takes pollen capsules. Excuse me. Loves them. She says they work.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to eat more honey.
From Cherry Bee Inc.
Cherry Bee
That's good for
sold
a cough.
at Myrtle and Mods.
Sold at Myrtle and Mods.
Where
At
else
a
can you
grocery
find it
store near
locally?
you.
Village Market.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I would like to.
Both Village Markets, then I take it. The one in
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
I
The
thought
one
the
in
one,
Rapid City might have some.
I think it does.
You
I
would
hope so.
think
That's
they'd
where Ricky.
carry-
That's where Ricky goes for lunch, and he's always like, "It's crystallized. I gotta swap them out."
He's a good guy for that.
Yeah, he goes. I saw some, and I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I gotta take him a case. I gotta switch it out.
That's the downside to Michigan honey is it's excuse me. It's really tasty, but it's low moisture, so it crystallizes really fast.
Yep.
It's kind of hard to work with when it's not liquid.
Yep.
So,
But you just warm it back up,
yep.
technically, right? You just
Yeah. As long as you got it in a glass container, so you're not melting plastic.
yeah.
We've gone away from plastic just
Okay.
because it crystallizes so much.
The glass bottles are nice, though. Your wife prefers the glass bottles. I think they add just a little extra. It just looks cool.
Character.
Yeah,
It's character.
I mean, you have to have the classic.
It's all
the
about
bears. You gotta have the bears, but
Yeah.
But like
that's
if
true.
you're getting like
Right.
a 1 pound jar with
Everybody's-
a cork in it, like when you switched over to those
It's
glass
classy,
bottles
yeah.
with a
Oh,
cork, I'm like, this
it
is
is.
like.
And every
It's unique.
woman thinks vase afterwards.
Ooh.
Come on now.
Flowers. You know.
It's more bang for your buck.
So you get honey and a base.
Yeah.
Pick one up
Pick one up.
next time you're in Myrtle Mods.
Zach, I'm gonna have to start charging Myrtle and Mods for advertisement, dude. This is
Lots of free ads
unbelievable.
tonight.
You can cut that whole thing out if you want.
Just kidding. He cut me out hacking up a lung.
So, if you could still talk about the honey
Yeah.
extraction process, because if you haven't seen the videos on Poems and Stones,
I have seen that one.
you have.
I've seen the machines. You give
yes,
me
the
the tour,
machines,
the whole deal.
the spinners, and then the bottling.
Awesome.
Just run through that.
Yeah, so the extraction shop consists of a bunch of different pieces of equipment. So easily the tastiest of all the bug vomits is honey from bees. I don't know if there's a tastier vomit out there, actually. We spin it out. We put it in barrels. We sell it. There's a lot of applications for honey. You can use it for topical rashes, facial, like a face mask. Actually, it'll tighten your skin up if you mix it with hibiscus. So if you're looking for a little less turkey neck, and put a little honey and hibiscus on your neck, to tighten
Interesting.
your skin up. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great natural remedy for cough.
Oh,
Thank God I had a little honey in my cup earlier. I just had a heck of a cough. Honey's cool. It's like wine because every year you get something relatively consistent, but it's nuanced every year because there's
It's like a
just-
vintage.
Yeah, I should be running a vintage, and I do actually. I mark pretty much everything as what year it is.
what year,
and
right?
I send samples in for pollen analysis and, glyphosate residue and fungicide and herbicide, all that fun stuff, just to make sure that I'm not ingesting anything I don't need to be
Sure.
ingesting. Everything's actually, I always worry because we're always putting honey supers on during the bloom, and we're always way below the threshold, the parts per million threshold on anything, whether it's amitraz, that mite treatment, or
Yep,
whether
yep.
it's a fungicide or glyphosate, very low, thankfully.
We don't use glyphosate anymore.
Yeah, you use glufosinate. No,
We
is it?
use
Yeah.
glufosinate, but,
Yeah.
but not glyphosate.
I don't know if I tested for that.
Systemic glufosinate.
It's this new form.
Right on. Cool.
Don't listen to them.
I'm just a beekeeper. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
We get it tested. We make sure it's a good, clean product.
Nice.
And I sleep well at night knowing that when I'm
selling thousands of pounds of honey to people that are going to eat that. Raw honey is antibacterial by nature, has live bacteria in it. Therefore, you should never feed raw honey to any human under the age of 1. Their gut biome is not established enough to process all of that live action bacteria in there. They'll develop, most likely will develop botulism. It's not a death sentence, but it's certainly uncomfortable.
And that is
Gotcha.
on the label on all of our honey, right?
Yeah. We don't. I mean, we sell raw honey, so you got to have it on the label. A lot of honey is, people will call it pasteurized, but that's a dairy term. I call it, it's sterilized. And what we'll do is we won't, but what a lot of companies will do, so it remains liquid, they will sterilize it, which means just get it up to a high temperature, cook all the bacteria out of it. And it won't crystallize. It'll just remain liquid on the shelf for pretty much forever, I think. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't solidify nearly as fast. I don't do that just because it's another step that I don't want to mess with. And you're also just removing all the good bacteria. I also think it changes the profile. You're cooking the living pollen out of it too.
Yep.
So yeah, eat raw honey. If your honey crystallizes solid, just warm it up. It reliquefies. So many people are like, I don't know what to do with this.
It's the real honey.
Yeah,
the real
just
deal.
scoop it
Real
out
raw.
and use it. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good for you.
What sizes do you package up?
We package mostly at 1 pounders. If people are looking for more, like larger amounts, we do like 1 gallon and 5 gallon buckets. Right now, I think what we're gonna roll with as our biggest container is a pint jar, which is like 1.5 pounds.
Okay.
Honey's so dense, it's I think it's 12 ounces is over a pound. Like 12 liquid ounces or fluid ounces is like 1.1 pounds. So it's dense, much denser than water. It's also a great thing that it's dense because it's part of the way that I filter a lot of the bee parts and maybe little wood parts or things that get into the honey is when the honey's still relatively warm, it's dense, so all the other imperfections, pieces of wax, it all rises to the top, and I can draw the honey off the bottom, and it's nice and clean, and I don't need to cook it or anything funky like that.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
It is a very cool process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of stinks because you're inside if you don't like that, but it's a cool process. It's kind of a loud job in there. One of the machines is what we call an uncapper. After the bees dry the cells, they cover it with wax to preserve it. And we have this device that we run these frames through, and it slices the wax open. That way, when we put those frames into the centrifugal machines, the honey flows out. That thing's just loud. It makes it for a day where you're just wearing headphones.
Yep.
We could buy a different device that wouldn't be so loud. Then I just make the stereo crank loud. I think you're either going to
Gotta
listen
make it
to
up somewhere, right?
you're going to listen to a radio station.
I
or
should,
a
and I
machine.
will put the a link to the video where you yourself
Yeah.
on the Poems and Stones channel explain the
Yeah.
entire process of all of this uncapping, putting in the spinner,
Relatively
and-
early
and
episode.
the wax and everything. Yeah, that was
not like a first for you, but
no. I think the first one of my first 5 I think was the pollination one that we did.
How come
One of
you
your
guys
first shows.
don't bottle all your honey? You said you sell some of it to other.
Yeah, it's it becomes a full-time job in itself.
Okay.
And I don't want to say I'm married to the bees, but it's a full-time job with the bees. So as far as if you're a beekeeper, you could be really busy if you wanted to. So there's a few routes you can take. You can be a commercial pollinator and then a honey producer like I am some of the time. But for me to package up that much honey that we produce in a year, I would have to have to become a full-time job.
Okay.
And down the road, I'd love to hire someone that I could trust to do that. But right now, it requires a little bit of expertise. I think I would have to do a better job of getting the product prepared for someone to package it, which it's not like it's that difficult. It's just a manner of finding someone and then executing that. But like, I like working the bees. I really do. So if that means that I sell it in bulk and I don't have quite as good of profit margin, but I still get to really the bees are better off for it because there's just so much to do to keep them alive. That most beekeepers do. Commercial guys, most of them do this.
Bottle, yeah.
Sell it by the barrel.
Okay.
Yeah. Now a lot of folks, wisen up and they see the profit margin and the money left on the table there, and they maybe hire their wife, or they start going to farmers markets, or they start, but even then they might only get through like 10 to 20 barrels in a year. So there's still a lot of honey to be sold.
How many barrels do you produce annually?
Man, it's compared to last year.
Last year was a down year, right?
Yeah, I'd like to say like a down year. Last year we were close to 100 barrels. So,
and they're how many pounds per barrel?
Barrels?
55-gallon barrels. 620 pounds ish per barrel. Yeah, I'd like to say we probably average around 100 barrels. So, what's that? 60,000 pounds.
That's a lot of honey.
That's a lot of honey.
Yeah, it's a good amount of honey, and it'd be great to see that profit margin go. But it's like the work life, having a life balance kind of thing.
Yep.
For sure.
So how out of that, how much do you guys bottle yourself?
Well, maybe just a couple barrels, really, a couple thousand pounds here and there.
Most of it people buy either by the 5-gallon bucket or the barrel. The barrels.
A fair amount that way. A lot of the stuff we package up, I would say maybe not the majority of it, but close to the majority of their stuff, we give it away to our landowners. So it's like when we're looking for habitat for bees to find a new spot, we're looking for something that has, a nice wide open area that I can pull a truck and trailer into and unload these bees with this forklift. Put up a bear fence, an electric fence, because most of the places around here, people will always tell me like, they never say, we never see bees around here, and I just tell them, well, if I put bees here, you'll find out if you have bears or not, because bears smell bees, and bears like to eat bees, and they will do that if you don't put a fence up around here. They won't. It'll take them but 2 days to find them.
They find them inside a deer fence, like out of
Oh
cocks.
yeah, they don't.
Yeah,
They don't stop
yeah,
them.
it's
No.
crazy.
Yeah,
Climb the deer fence, 8 foot tall, make their way right
Well,
over and
yeah.
just trash all lives.
that deer fence ain't nothing.
No.
They'll go climb a pine tree for fun.
Yeah, I know. It's just funny
Right.
that it's just
Yeah.
it's not rated for bear.
No, those clips that we hammered in to that fence aren't holding up. They're really just, they're screaming when that bear's up there.
Yep. Yeah. So how does one go? If
Yeah.
somebody listening has a chunk of land that they think might be fit
Yeah.
for bees, how would they get in contact with you?
Well, you'd get my number through you, or comment in
Put
the
it
YouTube.
in the comments.
Yeah, put it in the comments. We'll figure it out.
What's the mile radius from Traverse City? Because like we said earlier,
If you're like an hour and a half, yeah. Like I think at this point I'm willing to start reaching out, an hour and a half any one direction. But we're really kind of just looking to the north and to the east at this point because there's a big lake in the way.
Yeah,
And
a couple of those.
couple other operations that I try to be mindful of, and not. It doesn't make sense to park on top of somebody else.
Right.
Put bees next to somebody else's bees, and then they're just competing, and you're kind of choking each other a little bit, and that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah. Anybody who has a spot, I like to kind of give them a rundown on what we're looking for, and usually I know where they're talking about, and if it's locally here, I'll.
And
have
you
a
look,
good
you look them
idea.
up yourself too. You look on
I
a
always
couple
do,
apps and say,
yeah.
"Oh, this looks like a great spot."
I do
Reach out to people.
I do like to use Onyx just for exactly just that.
They did not sponsor this episode.
They should though. Anyway, I use that, and it's a lot more efficient. but a lot of times I use that to get a name, and then I'll go to the yellow pages and find
The
a
old-fashioned way.
name. Well, the online yellow pages.
Yeah.
Does anyone know
I don't
how
think
to
they even
run a
make
phone
phone
book?
books
Is a
anymore,
phone
do they?
book anyone? Put it in the comments down below if
Yeah.
you guys still have a phone book at your house.
I know
Yeah, that's a
Grandpa
good
gets mad because
question.
they don't make phone books anymore.
You remember, if they didn't update it, and you're like, "Whoa, this is the old address here." What are we
Well,
talking
and
about?
honestly, Onyx is always, not always, often, I should say often, they have the previous landowner
As well?
Well, just listed. So, like, I'll go talk to this guy, and he'll be like, I sold that 4 years ago to such and such.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I just, play the game, go knock on that guy's door, or, ring his bell,
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, mister.
What's the
I'd say, hey,
success rate? What's the success rate?
oh,
on,
you know what is
are they pretty open to it?
it's
or-
usually pretty open, and sometimes no. Sometimes they've had bees on there before, and a guy left a bunch of stuff laying
did a
around.
bad job, and they're
Ye-
they're
well-
rubbed a little raw.
Well, you just leave a mess. It's really easy to make a mess, and not pick it up, which is dumb. That'll get you kicked out of anybody's property.
right.
Yeah.
No, don't get me wrong. Some of my favorite bee yards are like right in somebody's junkyard. There's like park of bees by a bunch of like old campers and cars, and I don't feel the slightest bit bad about leaving like a piece of paper towel or something maybe falls out of the truck. It's like
No,
I mean, if I didn't see,
chase that one.
I mean, I would pick it up if I saw it, but I just it happens. Sometimes some of the products that we apply don't always stay in the colony, and maybe a stray piece of plastic here and there. Beetle blaster.
Mm-hmm.
That's another big pest that we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
The hive beetle.
Hmm.
The small hive beetle. It's a little black army tank that runs around sliming stuff up if the bees don't have the strength to fend them off. But the bees can't sting them. They can just kind of like redirect them into a corner and kind of corral them all up.
Interesting.
But yeah, they're a pain in the butt. And if you have a weak colony, they'll take it over and abscond them, basically force the bees out and just slime all the comb up. And
Wow.
it's gross.
It's a hive beetle.
It's aggressive in the hives. It's aggressive.
Yeah.
Gotta be
How big
careful.
is this beetle?
It's like a third the size, maybe a quarter the size of a bee.
Well, you can see with the naked eye.
Oh yeah, yeah, real easy.
Yeah.
Black beetle.
Most things you can see without any.
Correct.
Extra Like you can see the mite easily. I mean,
yeah, you
Because you've
really
been
not
trained
easily.
for it.
Yeah, not as easy, but the beetle is really easy to see. The mite, if I showed it to you on a larva, you would see it, and then once you saw it, you might be able to see it on a bee. But even then, it's really tricky to see on a bee.
well, they never stop moving too.
Yeah.
It's like how do you
And sometimes
how do you
the-
track that?
And sometimes the mite might be on their belly and they're crawling around. You don't see that.
Is the mite
But, like-
color? Like, is it?
Yeah, it's like
red?
a reddish.
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And like you have to use a microscope to look for tracheal mites. You have to use a microscope for like nosema or Lake Sinai virus, which are just very popular in bees. Which nosema leads to like dysentery, and bees are kind of still in the Stone Age, whereas like you get dysentery, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have to say that small hive beetle is also very manageable, but if you let it get out of control, you come back and you're like, oh, that 2 weeks went by fast for those guys, and they made a heck of a mess. But yeah, beekeeper, the term beekeeper, you're supposed to keep them. They are kind of tough to keep alive.
Not bee
with all-
loser.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if they're strong, they might just swarm,
Mm-hmm.
and you're queen and half the colony leave, and darn
ya.
it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you
Anything
guys
else?
Awesome.
Do you guys
I
have
mean,
to
this has been fascinating.
rotate where you store the bees through the summertime, or do they kind of just go back to the same spot
Well,
every year? Or
so the same bees don't necessarily go to the same spot, but yeah, like we use the exact same yards every year.
okay,
If I can leave the bear fence up, but people snowmobile and you don't want to
mm-hmm.
have any accidents when you got a 16 gauge wire running between two posts.
Somebody will lose something pretty quick.
I don't make the fence that tough. I mean, it probably wouldn't even injure anybody, but it'd make a mess of your track, and like the occasional deer runs through in the wintertime and just the wires just drug across the field, and you spend 10 minutes untangling wire. But it's just part of dealing with it. Most of the time, if it's a spot like that, I'll pick the fence up. It takes like 15 minutes to roll up the wire and pull the T-posts out.
Yeah.
But yeah, necessary evil. The electric fence keeps the bears out.
They cause a problem when they get to the hives. That's for sure.
Yeah, they can. I mean, people always say, "Oh, bears are looking for honey," and yeah, they do love honey, but they want that larva. They're getting in there for that brood, that protein content. The honey's a bonus. And so they can just rip frames out. And I know you've probably seen bear
I've
damage
seen them.
before.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I've seen
pretty
them before,
They
too.
just throw that stuff everywhere. Goes all over the place.
Well,
Yeah.
do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about anything?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about what I may or may not have missed. I'm sure that's the cool thing about bees is there's so much to cover.
Oh my god.
I'll have to come back and
You'll have to come
Yeah.
back.
maybe.
Yeah, this has been honestly
Have you seen
fascinating.
the movie The Beekeeper?
Yeah, that's a biography about my life, Zach. Autobiography. I thought they'd cast somebody with a little more hair on their head, but he's got a really hairy chest like me, so it's cool.
All right. Well, this is our new favorite segment, the episode recap. I wrote down a couple things as we
Okay.
go through the episode
right.
that I thought were interesting. I'd like to just bring back up to remind
Okay.
people. I wrote down Queens fighting to the death,
Yeah, Royal Rumble is real.
the Royal Rumble,
Yes.
festooning.
Festooning, yeah. It's a
That
good
really
word.
caught my
Word of the day.
ears there. Word of the day.
How'd you
Festooning.
spell it?
Fest tuning.
Yeah, it's about right, but it's two O's instead of a U.
I was close.
yeah,
Tuning.
it's not
Yeah.
Tuning.
Yeah, I like that.
Not
though.
tuning.
I think they should spell it like that.
Festoon.
I was just scribbling it on the fly.
Yeah.
And bee bomb detection was something I didn't think of. That wasn't on my
Yeah.
bingo card.
I don't know if
tonight,
they
but-
still do that anymore, but it's you can read it on the NIH website and a couple other places too that they
Right.
university studies.
Well, this is a great time if you'd like to plug any of your social media channels, where they can find you.
I really
Or
don't have
find the
much.
honey?
You can find the honey locally at Village Market or at Cherokee, Myrtle and Mods.
Mm-hmm.
Shouts out all those great places. Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. It's a lot of fun.
Dude, this is absolutely fascinating.
This
Seriously.
is actually very super
Yeah.
interesting. There's so much more that goes on with bees, I think, that people realize. And if anyone listens to even 15 minutes of this podcast, they're
Yeah.
going to learn more than they probably ever thought that
Yeah.
happened in a bee's
Yeah,
life.
Good questions. I think we covered a fair amount of ground, and
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great. We'll have you back on, and we'll learn even more next time.
cool.
So the last thing to do is thank our sponsor. So thanks, Wilbur Ellis, for supporting this episode of the Specialty Cropcast. With more than 100 years experience, they're helping growers move forward with custom solutions, expert advice, and trusted products. You guys can find those trusted tools, products, and people at wilburellisagribusiness.com. So we will see you guys in the next episode of the Specialty Cropcast on Homes and Stones.